everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Darf Talks. I'm your host, as always, Darf Mike, and this week I've got a very special guest, someone I've been trying to sit down with for a little bit now. It's Teric, Bibby Ingram, and he's here to talk to us about all things AZO esports. He is the coach for AZO. Team is Frosty K, Snakes, Grim, Infinite, and Voltage. Some new additions there, very recent. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing very good. Just wanted to say thank you for bringing us in, and thank you.
Thank you for appearing. I've got a lot to ask you, so we're gonna dive right into it. First, a little bit about yourself. What's the origin of the name? I always like to ask people.
Bibby, I come from Sacramento, California. So Bibby originated from Mike Bibby. He was one of my favorite basketball players since he played on the Sacramento Kings. So I kind of just took the name, and every time I plug, it seems to it's a bad name because people call me Baby, but I stuck with it, and that's how I kind of got my name.
Okay. People always call me Dwarf. Random pugs. What you've been playing a long time. I was sort of doing a little digging, finding out what I could about you. Your ESEA profile, I think the earliest team you were on in league history was in 2006.
Yeah, I'm old. Yeah, 1.6 in Source. It was like season 4, I think, or season 5, something like that in Source.
When did you start playing CS?
I don't know the exact age, but I want to say maybe 14. And I started out in Condition 0. My friend started playing it, and then my mom didn't believe in video games, so I would always have to sleep over at his house in order to play Counter-Strike. So
classic. Parents who didn't believe in video games. How was that? Was that sort of like a challenge growing up? With this as a growing interest of yours or a passion?
Yeah, it really was, because my mom didn't really believe in video games. She would rather have me outside playing with the kids down the street, or playing basketball on her basketball hoop outside, rather than sitting inside gaming. But I moved to my dad's house freshman year, and he got me a computer and everything. He worked graveyards, so it kind of let me. He worked from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. at a prison, so he was gone at work, so I'd just be home alone, so I'd just start playing throughout the night, and then I just kind of took over.
When did you start playing competitively?
It was in Condition 0. I played Siva main in Condition 0, but it was like literally dead. Like, people just would buy scouts, and it was like the last season of 1.6. Like, people just didn't care.
Okay. And were you an early adopter of Go?
No, I was probably the last person to actually make the switch. I wanted to believe that 1.6 was still going to be around, and so I didn't make the switch until like I was probably 2 months behind everybody else, and I also didn't have a good enough computer. So
okay, made the upgrade in the computer, and then it's like, all right, we're in.
Yeah.
When did you first make the transition into coaching?
Well, as everybody knows, like, I have a big brain for Counter-Strike, kind of like Matt. Not anything on the level of Matt, but I think more as a mindset-wise of staying in the game and actually, giving up my death for the other 4 teammates on the team to benefit the rounds. I think it's more important. But I mean, with my age and everything, and trying to go pro for CS for so long, and trying to compete at LANs and stuff like that, I just knew that, hey, I'm not going to make it. It's not for me. Maybe use my mindset and my discipline that I learned from the military and put it on a team so that they can practice and put in the hours in order to get pro and help them out.
Do you think that your background in the military really helps you with the coaching role?
100%.
Okay. What sort of aspects? I mean, just discipline or ability to conform to a schedule, or what dynamic from that in your background really contributes? You said?
It would probably have to be disciplinary. Like, people, if they overbuy or whatever, like sitting there and calling them out on it. Like, a lot of people over the internet, and especially MDL players, won't sit there and say, hey, Darf, you're doing this, you need to stop doing this. And Gage actually does a really good job on our team with doing that, because a lot of people like to think they made the right play or didn't make the right play, or hey, nice try, even though it was, the worst play that they've ever seen. They're like, hey, nice try, But I think with telling people that they're wrong and being hard on them, and kind of explaining in 2 ways, like, hey, you should have done this and this is why, and breaking it down into detail, that's kind of what I do for the team.
Making the transition from playing to coaching, were there specific lessons you took through, or was it a big transition, or was it sort of a natural for you?
It was a big transition because at the end of the day, I still wanted to play. I still wanted to grind and go pro. But I think that transitioning, that was my only way to kind of stay back in the scene and kind of get to that trophy because it's not about the money. It's about getting the trophy and getting the chance to play against top European teams and Australian teams in that 100K tournaments and majors. So I think that was like the only thing I could do in order to be there, even as a spectator, as a fan. I would have to coach or manage.
Do you? So you said initially, like, you still wanted to play. Do you still get the pang occasionally when you're watching? When you're the sixth man in the server, you're like, I could do that.
Yeah, of course.
Is it?
I
Do you think
always,
it's ever gonna go away?
I don't think so. I'm always competitive. I'm always hard. And at the end of the day, like I still want to play. Like even some of these SIVO matches this season, I got to stand in because some of the guys they don't take it serious. It's not that they don't take it serious. It's just like the opponent that we're playing is kind of they have no open experience. They do the history and look them up on EUC and SIVO like that, and they're like, hey, they have 200 hours in the game. Bibby, you can play. So I love jumping in, and when I jump in, I'm in game leading. I grab the op from players. I just do what I want. So
I gotcha. The madness that is SIVO.
exactly.
For a while, actually, what was this last spring? You were coaching an H1Z1 team.
Yeah.
What was that transition like, switching to another game?
Well, I knew Kelly, the owner of Alliance, for a while now, since like 1.6 and stuff like that. She played 1.6. I think she played on SK Ladies or something like that, like a long, long, long time ago, back in CPL days. And I've just known her for a while. It's all about connections in life. And then it wasn't necessarily coaching. It was kind of like managing slash putting them on a schedule. Like it goes back to that disciplinary action because they're in Vegas, and they're Europeans and they're out there, drinking alcohol and just trying to party. So it was kind of just putting a plan into effect and getting them to practice day in and day out, and then kind of just being there for them, and then also helping with like H1Z1 has more to do with the military rather than Counter-Strike. You know what I'm saying? There's no flashes. I mean, there are, but it's more about being with your team and staying together and then trying to stay alive, and that's what we do when we go to Afghanistan and stuff like that. That's what we're trained to do. So
that's interesting. So more of the real life dynamic as opposed to your experience in Counter-Strike.
Yes.
Interesting. When when you were coaching that H1Z1 team, were you kind of always looking to get back to CS, or was that something that was the plan, or was it just, this is the opportunity now, let's focus on this?
Oh, 100%. I wanted to come back to CS right away. But it was a simple fact that one, it was a non-move up season. I kind of needed some money, So, and Kelly at the end of the day looked out for me and has put me through with a lot of connects. So at the end of the day, I tried to help her out and also learn and branch off into learning more behind the scenes with other games, which at the end of the day will get me better if I want to jump into like manager role with like a big org or something like that. So can have that on my resume.
Okay. Speaking of getting back into CS, you joined ASIO. Now, when I first saw you attached to ASIO, it was actually in a temp role. It was at Tokyo and Tulsa, where the old ASIO roster, consisting of Frosty K, who's still on the team, Cesarwana, who's playing with you part of the season, Maui Snake, and Shonk and Nyquil. That was the five at the time. You were on as a temporary coach. From what we talked about then, I don't know whether this was the full plan or whether there was something you couldn't share, but it seemed like it was just sort of you were there to keep them on schedule for the event and to keep them going for the event and sort of see what you could do in the space of an event. What was that like? Was that like an audition kind of?
In a way, yeah. It was kind of like me and Tryhard. Basically, Tryhard is like the esports director of ASIO, and he kind of came to me with an idea and wanted a coach. ASIO was looking for a coach at the time, and I kind of don't want to coach for a team that kind of doesn't have a good organization or good people behind them, rather than just being the team, unless they know exactly what they're doing and they have that disciplinary action that I kind of want into effects. Because when you have an organization, you're playing in an organization, so it kind of makes people play more serious, put more time into their game individually, and then so basically I came to ASIO as like a trial to help. I believe in Frosty and some of the players on the team, and then just kind of wanted to see what they were doing. And then Jordan came to me with a plan to he wanted me to be the coach and manager of Azio and kind of create a winning roster, and then that's what it got to right now.
So it was sort of his idea of this roster needs a makeover. We're going to do sort of a full rebuild, a renovation, and he wanted you to be the architect of that rebuild.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I mean, obviously, it's a pretty significant makeover from then till now. The only consistent piece is Frosty. So was it totally your input of who you guys picked up, who you guys moved on, or who you guys kept, or was there was it a collaborative effort, or was it very much like this is your vision?
It was more so of what our vision was, but it was the simple fact that what players we can get because of there's players that were already on teams. There were players that were still under contract that there was no way in hell that we would buy them out. There's a different lot of variations to make a roster. So we kind of had a few ideas, but like the first roster that I wanted, like one person wouldn't play with another person, and then you got to deal with all that, and then kind of put into the buyouts and everything else, who's coming available next month, and kind of look at the role situation, and then kind of put together a roster, and then that's what happened.
Okay, so after the initial change, the initial new version of AZO was Snakes, Grim, Frosty K, MOTM, and Hunter.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about a little bit about like what this initial team dynamic was like, what you were looking for out of each role, or what slots you were trying to fill?
The issue was that like I kind of want to build a team that had a lot of fragging power, because if you look at every team in MDL, like not talking mess or anything, but a lot of teams have the 2 stars of the team and kind of the 3 support or the 3 less experienced players. I basically is what I can say, not the all stars, but when you like, I feel like our roster in MDL, besides like Swole, Vision, and a few others, there are teams that can't frag, even if our shots aren't working as hard as our players. Like our players can, it's not going to be a single player that drops a 30 every single game, as you see like on some of these pro teams. So I don't know what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Sort of a balance of the actual raw fragging.
Yeah, of course, and experience at the same time.
Okay. Now, the obvious blueprint that it seems like you were kind of trying to follow, that this team kind of followed, was the old Broken Alliance roster in a lot of ways. I mean, you had, in this initial version, you had 3 parts of it: Snakes, Grim, MOTM. You go way back with some of these players. Were you coaching that original Broken Alliance roster, or I know you came on for SOAR?
Yeah, it was Matt came into the roster, and then I started. That was like my start of like coaching / analyst.
Okay, so that was your first introduction to it. So you hopped on when they became SOAR. Obviously, they had an enormously successful season, qualified to Pro League, first season in the MDL. So this was kind of the recreation, the phoenix rising from the ashes of SOAR that became Dignitas, that fell apart, and now you're finding the disparate pieces of it and putting it back together. Was there some part of your brain that was like, okay, this team worked, like this Broken Alliance team worked, let's see if we can get some of that magic back?
I think the difference is with MDL is a lot of teams switch the rosters and they don't have the chemistry, or have never met each other in real life. And I believe once you meet someone in real life, and especially your teammate, you're going to want to trust them more in game. So the fact that we already had all these players, like for example, when I put together Armada, we had, Gage playing with some of these players, and then we have, I don't know, but like SOAR, we had 3 players. At the end of the day, they've played on teams together. So at the end of the day, it'll be quicker to transition into strats or putting together a team quicker than as if you have 5 different roles and you have to move them all around on certain maps. You have 4 players that play B, and then they have to learn how to play A. Like I put into effect all the roles that people play and kind of the spots that they play, and kind of put together a roster.
Okay. Now, one other thing that was kind of interesting, obviously, that just in terms of timing and opportunity for you, um, you you had Snakes come available. Obviously, he was 16. Dignitas elected not to add him onto the team. They let him out of whatever agreement or contract they had with him. He became available. He was one of the more promising free agents to come through. You played with him or worked with him on the SOAR roster. Was he sort of a piece that you wanted to build the rest of the team around?
1000%. Once I knew that he was going to turn 16 and come available, he was one of the first people I wanted to grab.
Okay. He's certainly a promising talent. I mean, anyone who's watched him play on LAN or online can see that. It's you have to be blind not to see the talent there, and building the team around him is definitely an interesting approach. Speaking of interesting approach to building the team, now that we've talked about the initial iteration, obviously before the season actually began, you've made further changes.
Yeah, that
Specifically
is
at this
correct.
point, you cut Hunter and MOTM and added Voltage and Infinite to the roster.
Yes, that is correct.
Can you talk me through those two moves?
As far as the Hunter situation, we were removing him to bring in Logan Voltage, and then Dignitas died, so it kind of came available for Gage to, Gage and Snakes being, I think they're one of the top 5 MDL players, underrated. Like everybody does have their experience in MDL, but I think Snakes and Gage, they're one of those players that can pick up a lot of roles. They can support, they can entry, they can lurk, they can also, secondary op. So having 2 players like that on a team that can basically do anything is very valuable into building a roster. But the move behind Hunter and bringing in Logan, it didn't really go into effect right away. We removed Hunter and then Gage became available, and we quickly hopped on Gage once we knew that he was available on the first. And then we started screaming, and it kind of implemented that, hey, we kind of need an op back on the roster, because Snakes would pick up the op and his fragging wasn't as good as him rifling. And also that would incorporate us not having a lurk in a way, because Gage would pick up like second man in, third man in, throwing flashes and stuff like that. So it kind of, the routes, the roles basically in the team didn't kind of fit. So that came with, should we bring in Logan? And then that was the removal of Ian to bring back in Logan.
Okay. I do want to ask some questions about Logan in particular and Voltage. He was part of that SOAR roster that became Dignitas. He looked very promising as an op for a while, and then sort of faded away in Dignitas. Seemed like there were a lot of motivation issues, just from what he said, what his team said. He's now just gone to college he's just his first semester in college. Are you worried that motivation issues are going to rear their head again?
Not at all. I think they're all on track and they know what they need to do in order to. Motivation's not an issue. I don't think so.
Okay. What do you think that's different about this team as opposed to what happened with Dignitas that's going to keep him bought in?
As far as the Dignitas, I can't really, talk about that because I wasn't really on the team. I got removed. But I feel like knowing Logan, with Ryan not being able to play pro when he basically, was our factor in order to get us to pro. He was that standing factor that helped us. I think with the removal of him, because him and Logan played so long on, they grinded open together, they grinded IM, they grinded main together, they grinded, I think, 6-7 seasons together. So the fact that his best friend wasn't playing along him at LANs and online, I think that kind of hurt him in a way that he kind of lost a little bit of motivation on the side. And then also with them going and losing a lot of matches, like 08, 09, starting the season off that bad, I think he kind of just lost the motivation for the game, even though being under Dignitas.
How much was that team chemistry, that chemistry of the 2 players, 2 friends, old LAN friends as well, of Logan and Ryan, of Snakes and Voltage? How important was that in terms of personal relationships in the team, of trying to capture that spark and add it to the roster?
Add it to our current roster, or?
Yeah. How was that a motivating factor in picking up Voltage as well?
100%, but I think at the end of the day, our team seeing what we did at the LAN and kind of not the motivation, but the dedication to the game and not taking this whole scenario serious kind of helped that, players, like when we went to LAN, people would not go to sleep, or, hey, we have to be up in 4 or 5 hours. They weren't sleeping. So we kind of needed somebody to be that disciplinary figure inside the game. It can't be just me outside of the game or try hard saying, hey, you guys got to do this and this and this. It needs to be someone in game. And that goes to, like, for example, when we eco, buying pistols, buying a Deagle instead of buying a P250, that's $400 that you're not going to have a smoke on an execute, and your smoke's the most important on that round. But like when we had on SOAR, Matt would be MC would be the person to sit there and disciplinary. Like he'll pause the whole scrim and sit there and say, "Hey, you're doing this wrong. This is what you need to do." And then he'll do it over and over and over until it's ingrained in their brain that they'll never make that mistake again. And that's what we were lacking in the team.
It's funny. I could actually hear that in Matt's voice as you were saying it. Just, I could definitely see that happening. So Voltage brings that sort of role, the more disciplined player who can sort of coach the other players on when it's right to do what and keep the flow of the game in order.
100%. Or even like just today, like we were practicing and like people were just talking over. We're just like making noises when we're trying to practice and shit. He'll just simply, sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. He'll just simply, hey, shut up. Like everybody listen. No, you need to do this, blah, blah, blah. So it's just a simple factor of speeding things up. And he realizes, he's motivated to play again.
Just don't worry too much about the cussing. Last week I had Kilroy and Hollywood on, and
I watched a little bit of that.
Bombs left and right. So don't worry.
Worries.
This is a family show here. So is he kind of like a lieutenant in the server? A little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
So Frosty's doing the calling in this iteration of the roster, right?
That is correct.
What does Frosty bring to the roster as an IGL?
It's a new role for him, but I think at the end of the day, compared to some players on the team, he has a lot of game sense, and I think he does the most homework on CS. Like he's the type of person every single morning. Like I'll wake up, come downstairs, get a water. He's the person DMing, watching demos. He's the one that stays up till 4 or 5 in the morning, watching the major, watching demos. He'll come to practice the next day with stuff that he wants to run and implement. It might not be the right thing that would be for our team, but we can work around what he wants to do and be like, hey, we'll just change one of those persons that you wanted over here throwing a nade, and this is why I think we should do this. And then we implement what he wants to do. But I think give him time and maybe, a LAN or two, and I think that he can be a really good caller. And that's what NA lacks is callers.
Was it his mentality that, he's the one holdover from the old roster, right? I mean, you have Sezi coming in to play the beginning of the season, but he's the one true holdover from the old roster. Was it that mental aspect, or was it something about his game itself that made you say, this is the piece we're going to keep?
I think it's his gameplay and his simple game sense. The way he communicates is, I'm doing this, I'm watching this every single second of the game. So everybody knows exactly what Trevor's doing. Now, some people on the team might not communicate as good as him and, sit pit for 30 seconds and nobody knows what he's doing when, where the B players don't know what he's doing, or even the site player in A on Inferno doesn't necessarily know what the pit guy's doing, and vice versa. So his comms are very precise, and at the end of the day, he's very good at game sense. He's a really strong CT player, and I think his T side, once we implement him how to play as an IGL, because it's kind of different, he can't really entry frag and like be as quick as he wants to jump to take spots as an IGL. Once we implement that and move him around maybe a little bit, I think he'll be really good. But he's a very good CT player, like anchoring sites and stuff like that.
Okay. You've got a very young team. Obviously, communication is an issue in the most experienced of NA rosters. It's just kind of been a hallmark of the North American scene. Is establishing those good lines of communication, that clear, knowledge and information flow, something that's been a priority for you as a coach?
I think it is. Communication, I think at the end of the day, even if you lose or win, as long as you're communicating, sometimes you're not going to hit the shots. Sometimes you're going to miss a smoke or whatever the case may be. As long as you're communicating and you have a positive mindset, I'll take a loss here and there. You know what I'm saying? As long as I'll be happy with us losing in a small way, as long as we're communicating and our mindsets are still in the game. And that's a problem in NA. People raging, oh my God, I'm 0-10, fuck this, fuck that. You're making the wrong calls. You're so shit, arguing with teammates. And I think at the end of the day, especially with us having a house, it's more friendly and it brings out, the tension and the arguments that won't happen within the game.
I kind of want to talk about that. ASIO as an org is obviously doing something that's very different from what you see most MDL orgs do. They have a full team house in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. You've got 3 out of the 5 there right now, right?
That is correct.
So it's Infinite Snakes and Frosty who are there right now.
Infinite will be here on Sunday morning.
Infinite will be there on Sunday. Okay, so he's coming in. And then Grim and Voltage are going to be doing it remote, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. What's that dynamic like, having 3 out of the 5 players on the roster actually in the house with you? you coaching. I don't know, is Tryhard in the house as well?
No, Tryhard has his own house about 5-10 miles away.
Okay, but close. Having that whole support structure, everyone in the same location, everyone working together. What kind of a change is that from rosters you've been on previously?
I think on the Source situation, I mean, everybody was young and in high school. That wouldn't have worked as far as a house. I don't really believe in houses. I kind of like what Complexity is doing. If we were to make pro, getting apartments right next to each other, so therefore you have your own space and kind of me being older, Voltage being older. I think that would work a lot better with teamwork and stuff like that. But having 3 people at the house every day to kind of put everybody else in check, like they put me in check, I put them in check. I think it's important to MDL, but I don't kind of believe in houses in pro.
Okay. But at this level, with this age of the team, with the new young roster, do you think it's helping build chemistry?
I believe 100% it is.
Is
And
it
it's
weird
doing
to
it.
have? Oh no, go ahead.
No, and it's doing it very quickly too.
That's good. Is it weird to have 2 of the players not in house with you?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, school comes first, and I always tell them that school comes first. If they have bad grades, I'll even bench them. If they have 5S on the team, you're not gonna miss school. And they understand that sometimes, even for lands, like say we qualify for Japan or something, and somebody has finals, they're gonna stay back and probably do school. At the end of the day, school is the most important thing in life, and that's what I believe in. So if we have to get a stand-in, hey, it's just what we got to do, considering we have 2 people in school.
Especially with a young team, I mean, obviously their parents are involved. Their parents have concerns about that kind of thing. Does that sort of mentality of school first as a priority help you, I guess, have the parents buy in and trust you more?
100%. Snakes would not be in this house if his mom did not trust me. So I feel like we built the relationship on sore days, and she kind of knows, I'm going to be disciplinary on him. And Ryan's actually learning a lot in the house, but Ryan is the youngest on the team, and I don't think if we had the relationship with the parents, he would be here.
Fair enough. One other interesting aspect of the team, something that you don't really see on a lot of MDL teams or even really pro teams, is in one way you guys kind of have a 6th man.
Yeah.
You have Hunter. Hunter's still attached to the AZO org. He's starting a Fortnite team, I believe, or he's
Yes,
working.
that is correct.
Okay. So he's working under the AZO brand in Fortnite, but you also have him available as a substitute for the CS roster, right?
That is correct.
What's that dynamic like, having Hunter available?
I think it's very key because Grim is in high school to senior year, and Logan Voltage is in college.
Mhm.
So I think that if we have a qualifier or a close qualifier, especially on like a Thursday morning at 11 a.m., we have Hunter in defect, and he's in the house. So therefore, he could just group up around me or Trevor's PC, teach him all the strats, and he also kind of watches our scrims anyway behind us. So he kind of already knows what we do and the structure that we bring to the table when it's time to play. So I feel like having him, especially in the house, is very key and very vital to, because when you kind of have a stand-in, he doesn't know what you guys run. He kind of has to fill a role that he doesn't want to do or a spot. So it's kind of just, it's kind of a dead leg sometimes on the team,
Do you think that it's something that uniquely benefits your team just because of the situation with having people in school, or do you think it's something that could be helpful to any roster?
I think it would be helpful to any roster if they have a solid 6. I mean, stuff happens in the season, but I mean, it's hard because the really good players that are 6th, they want to start. And so they're going to go to another team and try to get that starting position in order to show and prove what they got, because everyone here at the end of the day wants to play pro.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about your personal coaching dynamics, sort of the mechanics, I guess, of coaching. Before we were getting on here, you were talking about, oh, we're getting into brack, like I'm just going to get them started and then I'll hop on the call with you.
Yeah.
What's sort of your approach to practice, I guess?
I necessarily don't know the right way to practice, but I'm really good friends with I'm a Pet and Zeus, and I ask them questions, every month or every week, and try to get ideas of how we want to do it. But for now, we're just practicing server work, going over 3-4 maps, getting ready for a Monday, because Monday is the start of the season, and then just scrimming. If something happens, a lot of the times, the whole team, even when we're done practicing, like we just dry run for 2 hours on one map and then scrim 3-4 scrims. We'll even, after the Like, even if we lose all 4 scrims, we'll sit there and go and sit in a server and go over all of our mistakes for that whole day and spend a whole another hour and a half of going over our mistakes or the problems that happened within that day.
At this point, it's a very new roster. You're still sort of trying to install and figure out the system, I assume. Do you do a lot of demo watching?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Of other teams as well as potential opponents?
What we kind of do is we don't really watch top 5 demos except Australis, like the top 5 teams in the world, because, like, for example, not talking mess or anything, but like people like you or people like, you know, main players or stuff like that, or even MDL players, even top, probably not pros, but MDL players specifically like to watch majors like yourself, and you're gonna, when it comes time to run a pistol or a strat, you're gonna be like, I remember Australia running this in the finals. Everyone's seen that strat. Millions of people have seen that strat. So what we kind of do and what kind of Trevor does, since he's the IGL, he watches about the top 10 to 20 teams and kind of steals their pistols or their setups, and then therefore that helps us when within the game, when we get in game, nobody's seen that pistol, nobody's seen that strat, nobody's seen. So it kind of helps us out more, I feel like, in game, because we're running things that people have never seen. And that's kind of like the Vega Squadron, you know, that's what they do, and that's how they jumped quickly into the scene, running stuff that nobody knows what they're doing.
It's a very young team that you're working with. What are you trying to impart to them as sort of practice habits, both, I guess, in and out of the server, preparation, practice, that kind of a thing?
It's kind of different right now because we do have to use Sezi, so it's kind of implementing him in scrims, and then kind of like me and Voltage kind of coaching as a double coach in the server, because Voltage is going to be standing out most of the matches, or the first 8 matches. So it's kind of, I don't know how we're going to, like, we created a plan to do this, but it's kind of iffy either route we go with, filling in Sezi for scrims, filling in Voltage for scrims, and then when Sezi's here, Ryan has to op, so like the strats and the setups are going to be different every single time.
Does that, integrating a player like Sezi, I mean, there's some familiarity. Frosty's obviously familiar with him as a player, having played a season with him. You've got some familiarity with him as a coach, having worked with him in Tulsa, obviously implementing him now. But what is that like? Are you just trying to sort of slot him into roles, or is it very much a change in the overall team dynamic? You said Ryan's picking up the op when Sezi's a part of the team. Does that shift everybody's role?
In a certain way, because for example, if, you know, Ryan's opping solo B, it's usually Voltage doing it, and then we have somebody else helping. So we have to move. No, not necessarily on that map, but on other maps. Like for example, if Ryan were to go op A and fill Voltage's role, if Ryan had to go fill Voltage's role opping at A on Inferno, he knows those setups and he knows those ramps. So then the B players, because Gage plays B with Logan, so it would be Gage and Sezi at B. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but basically, yeah, it would be different.
Okay.
Both sites would have to literally teach Ryan what Logan's doing at that site as an opper, and we go over that. Then Gage is going to have to go over setups with Sezi at B or whatever it might be.
One of the things, still while we're on practice, before I sort of veer us away from the topic of practice, one of the things when I talk to other people around the league about you as a coach, that people cite is one of the big things that you bring to a roster and the big things you bring as a coach is access. You talked about how connections are important previously in this chat. But from my understanding, you have access to the pro scrim group.
Yes, that is correct.
So are you bringing the ability to practice at a higher caliber to this team than a lot of NBL teams have access to?
100%, yeah. I mean, I don't like to get a lot of pro scrims, and it's kind of hard to get pro scrims because of the simple fact that, you know, we are MDL and we kind of have no results and stuff like that. But I mean, perfect example is we played Ghost and Energy. We played Ghost on Tuesday and then Energy 2-3 maps last night. But it's a whole different style of play because our stuff will work that we're running versus NRG and stuff like that in Ghost. Some of our strats, like say we have a B strat, it works versus Ghost and Energy, and then we run that same B strat on the same map versus, you know, Vision or someone else. It doesn't work. And then if we run that B strat that we normally run on a different map versus Vision and it works, and then we run it versus Energy and Ghost, it doesn't work. So it's kind of hit or miss on some of the strats that we run versus pro teams and MDL teams. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes they work versus the opposite. You know, they work for pro, but they don't work for MDL.
Do you think there's an entire meta shift between those levels?
100%.
That's interesting. That's interesting that because I mean, in any situation, you'd expect that the pro team would have the advantage, but sometimes these upset teams, I guess, come out with a style that's just really not expected.
Yeah, I feel like when we scrim, like for example, when we scrimmed energy yesterday, I feel like some of the stuff was working because of the simple fact that, hey, when they see this smoke and this smoke, this is usually what happens versus like C9 or liquid, and then we did it a whole different way of a strat or fake, and then it worked. So it kind of brought, I don't know, I feel like when they scrim us, sometimes it might be a waste of time, or they might be like, hey, what the fuck are they doing? Like, this is dumb as shit, but it worked for us. And we're like, oh my God, it worked for Synergy. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. One thing I want to touch on before we get too far away from it, I realize I neglected to ask you this earlier, but one aspect of having a team like this and having a team in the team house um, is you did kind of have an interesting situation when you were making roster changes, which
Hmm.
is that both of the players you were moving or changing, they were there. Now, Hunter, from my understanding, was sort of aware that this was happening and was okay with it.
Yeah, he was perfectly fine with it.
But Ian, MOTM, was, I don't think he was planning to be cut.
No, he
To
was
be moved
not.
from us. So what was that like having him there and having to make that change, especially since he had a pretty close relationship with a lot of the players on the roster?
Yeah, 100%. Um, I feel, he's probably gonna take it to heart and think it was all me, or think that like I entitled this. But I mean, I did bring it up because of the simple fact of not having someone disciplinary in the game. I don't think it's necessarily because we didn't have an op, but something about Ian is he does take the game very serious and he does grind the game. There's nothing against him. It was just kind of it, it was, I don't know, like Dignitas died, Gage came available, and then we just had all these factors come into play that it was just meant to be, and it was just how it happened, I guess.
So it was more of a we need to add these players as opposed to we need to remove this one.
Yes, 100%.
Was there I mean just the actual conversation, right? The conversation of sitting down with somebody and telling them, "Look, I know you've come out to this team house, but we've decided to go in a different direction." Was that tough?
100% it was.
How did the team overall, team morale, team emotions, how did they respond? How did they take it?
Jordan came over to the house, Jordan's tryhard, and then we kind of just sat down at the table and talked, and had a professional talk, and then Jordan kind of just told Ian, and I kind of told Ian why we kind of did it in a small way. I don't think he, felt like he got the full reason, but at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with his gameplay, and I want every MDL team to know that for, picking him up or obtaining him. He works very hard. He is a good player. I mean, he did have 90 ADR. I think he led ADR last season on Vireo, and he does have every role to fit. He can secondary op. He has good mid round calling. Um, and he has a lot of motivation for the game. It takes a lot to leave your family and your friends to come out and live in a house. And so I just don't want people to think like, hey, Ian's a bad player or vice versa. It was just a matter of who came available and what we needed on a team. And we needed someone that was disciplinary and someone going to put, the young guns in check. Even though Logan's the same age as some of them, Logan has that voice on the team and the respect that, hey, Logan's done this. At the end of the day, he made pro, he played pro. The longest out of all of them, actually, I don't know if it was Grim.
A little longer.
Yeah, a little bit longer, but Logan has, been there and done it and experienced it, and we needed a voice on the team inside the game, and I think that's kind of just what brought this into what it is now.
Do you think the pro experience that both Grim and Voltage got from their time on Dignitas, do you think that that's something that they're bringing to this new team?
100%. I think knowing Grim, his communication got a lot better, and him being more valuable and having game sense, his game sense got a ton better. His game sense some of the time is way better than on Soar. Or not. I didn't mean like that, but like
No,
it got his game sense got way better being, and especially being at the minor. Playing versus top teams and him having to be aware of even what his teams are doing at B and he's playing at A. That's kind of what one of his that's kind of like the only thing he lacked on Soar is being aware, of the smokes coming out, how many people usually come, what they're doing. the tendencies of the other team. That's kind of what he lacked. And I feel like seeing him play now, his game sense is just, it's a whole nother level.
Now, with that, I guess, middle iteration, not the original iteration of Azio that played last season, but with the first iteration of this new version, you guys kind of got a test case when you came out to GexCon.
Yes.
Full team came out to Gex Convention, including yourself and including Tryhard. Full roster was competing. You guys were playing. You took a tough loss against Vision. Was that sort of a test case of like, let's see how this roster goes and then figure out what we need to do from there?
I think that was a good test. I do still think that, the LAN, I mean, no offense against the LAN, but the LAN was kind of seeded wrong. And, the bracket was, there's no reason why 3 MDL teams, us, Accelerate, and Vision should all be, only one team going to the finals. But, no offense against anyone else at the LAN. But, things happened. We lost the Vision, and it was kind of like a wake up call that, hey, you guys got to realize we do have, one of the best organizations, like top 3 in MDL, and we have a house. The only teams that have a house in MDL are the teams that are, like Bravado, Team 1, that are from another country. They're not from our country. I think we're the only team with a house, and people need to realize that there's thousands of people that would love to be on this roster that still message us if we're removing anyone, if can I try out if, you remove this person? I heard a rumor, people starting rumors about our team, us removing. So once we got into effect, like, hey, you're on this team, there's thousands of people that want your spot. They kind of just put it into effect and, are ready to grind.
So coming into this season, what's the objective? Obviously, there's one big objective, but what do you want to see out of this team in this Mountain Dew League season?
I mean, I'm always a small goal person. They're more of a, hey, we're winning MDL type of players. Some of them. I'm let's go positive. Let's win 6 out of these first 8 matches with Sezi. Let's, not choke and go 2-6 or whatever the case may be, and then go positive. Go through that roster transition with Sezi leaving the roster since we had to keep the roster alive, and then implementing to let's make playoffs. Let's win the first round. Then let's make LAN. Then let's go to LAN and get first. I'm not a hey we're going 6-0 type of person. It's all small goals for me.
So the schedule just came out for ESEA.
Yeah.
Did you just immediately start like outlining matches and think, look, this one's gonna be a dub, this one's gonna be challenging?
Yeah. And it sucks to know that, like, I think 5 out of our 8 matches are gonna be the toughest matches probably throughout the whole season. And looking at some of the bottom matches that we have, or like the last 8 matches, like they're, in our eyes, not really a competition. But hey, we gotta, start somewhere, and it's a wake up call to get these guys grinding and going, and starting off the season good.
Having seen what you're up against, do you think, even with the impediment of having a player who obviously isn't in the long term plan on the roster initially, do you think you can make it?
I think we can. It's just gonna come down to putting in the work. And I mean, says he is at the house. Thank God, he is helping us out. And I think with him being at the house and him and Hunter, even though Hunter plays Fortnite most of the time, he's still, both of them, they watch it right behind us on our screens. They're sitting in TeamSpeak with us. Like, even if they're eating, they still zone in and watch, a couple rounds, or even us in practice strats. And so I feel like him being at the house and helping us out is a huge, huge thing for us. And hopefully we win all 8 matches with him. I know he's super motivated to show everyone that he's, still got it.
Gotta make that audition, right?
Of course.
When do you expect to see this roster in general, the full version of this roster sort of hit their stride?
I think it'd take like 4 or 6 weeks. Like fully like making every close qualifier, beating top teams, practicing every day versus pro teams, stuff like that. I think it'll be 4 or 6 weeks.
Okay. Month and a half.
Yeah, and it's a simple it's the simple fact that they've already played together, so they kind of already know how each other play, and they already trust each other, and being at the house, it helps too. So I think it'll be much quicker than people kind of think.
That old Broken Alliance roster, right, was an upset roster. They went through some qualifiers. They bodied some competition they had no business being up against to begin with. Do you think that spark's going to translate to this new roster?
100%. Everybody knows exactly. To this day, when things happen and we beat a team, even in pro scrims or like a close qualifier or something like that, they still joke about that CLG video that I think MOTM was streaming. They joke about that every single day, and everybody realizes the teams that we used to beat and you know the teams that we can beat.
What I guess my question is, if you achieve the ultimate goal is to make Pro League, right? This is a move up season. That's the goal of every team in MDL this season. Everybody wants to get that Pro League slot.
Yep.
What happens this time? Because the last time you were on a roster that made that Pro League slot, that made an improbable run, no one was frankly expecting you guys to do that well. Came up, won the LAN, made it to Pro. The team immediately kind of fell apart. Snakes obviously couldn't play because of age. You were cut in place of Shinobi. Then Dignitas took over the roster, and bit by bit, players got cut, and the team that had made Pro just kind of ceased to be.
Yeah. I think we're all set to keep everybody going, but I think the different, like, kind of like doing that H1 thing in Vegas with the Alliance, I think that learning how they kind of work things behind the scenes and kind of talking to Jordan to see how we want to do this. I think we're not going to go the route of like if EG contact us or anybody else contacts us, we're going to stay and keep it small and kind of build our own brand with Azio, kind of like the Astralis and Godsend effect, like they did. The players own shares of the organization and the teams, and they can move into manager roles if they do get removed off the team. So therefore, it still kind of sets up their life if they want to sell their share and kind of open up a business or go to school or move. It benefits everybody in the long run, which it kind of didn't doing the dig effect, But I think we're just going to stay with the Azio and kind of implement stricter, rules when it comes to pro if we make pro. Like, losing salary if your desk is dirty, like you don't clean your rooms, like little stuff like that I've seen Optic do. Maybe even the first month, I even suggested like first month we make pro, we don't make a pro league salary, because people tend to make pro and like, hey, I'm getting $5,000 instead of $500. I'm gonna slack off and stop working, and so kind of give them that $2,000 for that first month in between, a little bit more than MDL, but kind of make them earn it. They'll still get that $3,000 even if they're cut after that first month. I'm just saying, but kind of say, hey, you still need to work for this, and you can't sit back and get in your Gucci flip flops and your Yeezys all day and sit here and think that you're gonna get a paycheck. You got to grind times 5 harder now, and so kind of give them that low paycheck. Yeah,
I go for the Yeezys in the Gucci flip flops. That's the ultimate move, man. So, I mean, it sounds like that you're giving this a great deal of thought. Do you think that ASIO as an organization, I mean, you've got Tryhard, who's a lot more plugged in directly with the players. Do you think they understand what they're getting with this roster in a way that Dignitas just kind of didn't seem to get it when they picked up that SOAR roster?
100%. I think Jordan understands. At the end of the day, he comes over to the house. He, eats Taco Bell with us. He sits there and, kind of having that leader that you could sit there and having the friendship with him. Like, as far as like if I was a player, like if I was Snakes or something, having that friendship rather than, hey, you've never met your CEO, you talk to him once a week just for business. Like, I feel like it's better at the long run to sit there and, open up about problems or changes or stuff like that. So I think, yeah, Azio is good.
So I know we talked a little bit about how far you see this going. You said you're a small goal kind of guy. You want to see them make X number of games and then make this and make that. I want you to give me a bold guarantee for the season. I know it's maybe not ideally what you're trying to do, but I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm going to say, give me a hard objective that you're going to guarantee your team's going to make.
We will make playoffs. I actually have a notepad that we all guess kind of what our record would be this season. Trevor said 18-1. I didn't ask a lot of people on the team because they weren't on yet. Frosty said 18-1. Snake said 13-6. I said 14-5. Sezzy said we're going 8-0 until he's replaced.
8. So, Sezzy's. I like the confidence, Sezzy.
Yeah, Sezzy's very, very confident, and we grind pugs every night and throw smokes and stuff like that. So he's very motivated.
Sezzy's gonna drop 30 every game. Calling it now.
That's how his mentality is right now. He's ready.
I like it. All right, so guarantee is playoffs. That's the hard guarantee. Beyond that, you're going to see how far you can take it.
And I'll guarantee you, Another guarantee is since it's 2 move-up seasons in a row, we'll be pro within the 2 seasons.
Oh, I like that one. That one's bold. I like that one. Here's the Bibby guarantee, folks. This roster or some version of the AZO roster is going to make pro within 2 seasons. You heard it here first, folks. It's going to happen. If it happens, the man's a prophet. He's calling a shot right now.
100%.
We'll see if it goes in. I like it. I like the balls. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bibby. It has been a pleasure. You're always fun to talk to at LANs and always a source of great insight. And I've enjoyed getting the chance to sit you down and interrogate you a little bit. Before we sort of fade away here and let you get into practice, I know you got some scrims lined up tonight. Got a lot of work to do now that the season's about to start.
Yeah, we actually just canceled 2 of our scrims because we're going to play first round of CSGO playoffs.
Ooh.
So if you want to, hop on that cast.
Is that tonight?
Yeah, it'll be in an hour, actually.
Who are you playing?
Don't know them, but should be some good content.
I might hop on that cast. All right, folks, we might be casting the CSGO main playoffs, and we'll slide into that on my own personal channel. So check that out, twitch.tv/DarfMike. Probably actually going to cast that. Why not? I've been itching for a little Counter-Strike. But do you want to give any shout outs before we cut off here? You got anything you want to shout out? Anybody in particular?
No, I'd just like to thank ASIO Esports, and Jordan for letting me be in the position to, try to do all this. And I want to thank the team for putting up with me yelling at them and, trying to put them into effect that, hey, this is real. You can basically start a career. You can start YouTube, you can start Twitch, off of all this and have your life set rather than working a 9 to 5. And I want to thank all the fans and all the friends that tuned in. And I want to thank you for bringing me on board. And that's pretty much it.
So, folks, if you liked hearing from this man, you should give him a follow on Twitter. His Twitter is @Bibby_CS. You should give the organization a follow. They're an exciting team to watch. It's ASIO Esports. They're definitely going to be a team to watch in this MDL season. Keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on the prize, and we'll see if they meet that guarantee of pro in 2 seasons. I liked it. Bold. That's going to be it for me this week. Go ahead and check out you said it's starting at 10?
Yes, it's going to be an hour.
Okay, go ahead and check out in an hour on my stream. I'll be casting these guys in their CSGO playoff match so you can see in action what they were talking about just here. Give Nerd Street a follow on Twitter if you want to check out when we're going live again. That's @NerdStreetGamers, Street spelled ST, so N3RDST Gamers. I hope you can spell that. That's going to be it from us this week. Tune in next week at 8 p.m. Eastern when we'll be back with somebody else.
Shout out Osodink. Oh.
Working